Well, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock or just gone 10 o'clock. So let's get cracking with this webinar. Many thanks indeed for joining us today on the Chalkstring estimating webinar. Hopefully you can hear me now and you can see my screen. So let's start pushing through. So as I say, first of all, welcome. Appreciate you're all busy people. So I appreciate your time to take your time out of the day to look at what we've got to offer today. Bit of housekeeping, first of all. I would hope you heard the go to webinar announcer when you joined up, which means your audio is working fine. If not, please just check your audio settings. We do recommend you use a headset for this webinar just to maximize the sound, but it's entirely up to you, but that's what we recommend. And if you could please just push all other windows that are in the way down and out of the way, or minimize them all just to give you maximum screen, then hopefully you'll be able to see everything we're going to go through. So just a bit of housekeeping to get us going. Firstly, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Barry Chapman. I'm one of the directors and one of the founders of Chalkstring, and I'll be your host for today's webinar, taking you through the estimating side of Chalkstring. My background is very much in quantity surveying and engineering, and you can see my bio on LinkedIn, but I've worked for a number of prominent companies in terms of contractors and some subcontractors as well. So I'll be walking you through this with a sort of QS hat on. So today, the objective of the webinar really is to talk through the functionality in Chalkstring to enable you to produce tenders or to price jobs quickly and easily when you get inquiries coming in. Chalkstring is aimed very much at specialist subcontractors in construction. So everything you see today will be based around the perspective of a specialist subcontractor, i.e. a company that is buying materials, paying labour, adding a markup to it and selling that service on to a client, whether it's a main contractor or whether it's a developer directly. So everything you'll see will be from a specialist subcontractor's perspective, and we're going to focus on estimating. It is worth saying that the webinar itself will be recorded, and we will be distributing this after the session. We'll email this to you. So should you wish to look at it again, or should you wish to share it with colleagues, then obviously please feel free to do so. And hopefully that will mean you don't need to take lots of notes as we go through. So the agenda for today, it's quite a short agenda, quite a specific topic we're focusing on here. So I just wanted to touch briefly on what is Chalkstring, just a couple of slides for people who's on the call who haven't seen Chalkstring before. So what is the product in its entirety? Then clearly we'll go straight into the estimating side of things and talk you through the main functionality. The majority of today will be based around a demonstration live in the software to show you how it works in the software. And at the end, time dependent, then we'll have an opportunity hopefully for a couple of questions at the end that are coming in from the viewers. So pretty short and concise agenda to go through today. So starting off with what is Chalkstring, and I'm not looking to spend a long time on this bit because this is all about estimating today, but if you haven't seen Chalkstring before or it's new to you, it's probably just worth explaining that the Chalkstring essentially is it's an integrated system, but it's all about estimating, procurement, and real-time cost reporting, and it's been written specifically for specialist subcontractors in construction. It does a lot more than just estimating, procurement, and real-time cost reporting, but that's the best way to describe this kind of system. You know, it manages things like pricing, value engineering, variations, procurement, paying subcontractors, CVRs, etc. But it's a single system that manages the whole project from pricing the job right through to final account and everything in between. And of course, of that, we're going to focus on estimating. So in terms of what Chalkstring does, just to lay out the stall a wee bit, at the heart of Chalkstring is a database of your information. So this is your materials, your prices that you pay from your various different suppliers and distributors, all the ways in which you measure and pay your subcontract labor. And I'll come into templates in due course as we go into the software, but it's essentially a database of your information that you use to price projects, and that sits very much at the heart of Chalkstring. That is very much bespoke or customized to your business, you know, your own pricing and your own materials, etc. And that is really the heartbeat of Chalkstring that underpins everything Chalkstring does. So the first thing that you do with Chalkstring is price the job, whether you want to call it estimating, tendering, pricing, or whatever terminology you use, is putting together your fee bid for the job. So Chalkstring uses rate build-ups, bills of quantities, discounts, prelims, all the things you'd expect to see, all the things you use now when you're pricing projects are used within Chalkstring to build your tender and to enable you to submit that tender to your client, and also to set your budgets, produce material bills, labour bills, all those sorts of things pre-contract before you've even been awarded the project. And obviously that's a focus for today. Once the job has been secured, then of course the project information is in Chalkstring already. So rather than open up a different set of worksheets with your commercial team and do a lengthy handover, what Chalkstring enables you to do is just pass that information seamlessly in the software to your commercial team, who can then run the project. And they may wish to start with reviewing the tender and recosting it and trying to increase buying gains, comparing options, all those sorts of things. But at that point, they are running the live contract using Chalkstring. Chalkstring then goes on to manage things like material requirements, material bills, and it manages the whole procurement process. So it will raise purchase orders, enable you to control and manage all your ordering across the system. It'll track things like delivery notes and also invoice reconciliation. So the whole procurement side of that is managed within Chalkstring as well. And it's really all about making sure you buy the right quantities of the right materials at the right time and at the right price as well, making sure you're not over ordering, overpaying, etc. And that's the sort of procurement aspect of the software. Needless to say, scope changes on your project, so you can add variations, remeasure, change the scope at any stage you want to reflect that your live project. And obviously that's a big part of modern construction is how things change rapidly on site. You can change scope at any time you want to. From a commercial perspective, it's all then about tracking progress on site, ticking off what work has been done, and the software then automatically generates internal valuations for you based on the work that you've done. That automatically then becomes the basis of your external valuation or your application for payment to your client, and it automates the whole process of generating an application with one button, including things like overbooking and materials on site and all those sorts of things you'll want to do. And then another large piece of Chalkstring is very much about managing your subcontractors. And when they're claiming money from you, they're putting applications in or sending invoices to you, it's about measuring and checking the work they're claiming versus the work you've actually done on site to make sure you're not being ripped off, they're not overbooking, etc. So a very simple slide, but those are the main things Chalkstring does. You start with the pricing side of things, which we'll focus on today, then turn into a real job, manage your procurement, and then manage your valuations, your applications, and so on. But what Chalkstring's then also doing is taking all that information and displaying it to you in a live CVR. So what it's then doing is showing you this as a real-time set of dashboards and reports, not just for one project, but for all your projects. So you can see at any time, in real time, how your project is performing, the health of your project, if you like, cost versus value, accrued cost versus actual costs, cost to complete, projected margins, all the things you'll want to keep your finger on the pulse with. And that information is displayed in real time at all times. And then the final piece of the jigsaw is that Chalkstring is a project cost management system, but you will clearly have an accountancy piece of software within your business, and it may be one of many different systems. And these are the ones we most commonly come across, Sage being the most common, but we see Xero and QuickBooks certainly catching up pretty fast. But whatever accountancy system you use to actually pay your suppliers and chase your debtors, Chalkstring will talk to those account systems too and translate across the key information into your accountancy software. So it's designed to sit alongside an account system rather than trying to compete with or replace an accounts package. So hopefully that gives you a flavour for what Chalkstring is. There's a lot going on there in the system, and clearly the focus of today, and I won't go outside this remit, is very much about the estimating, the pricing side of this. So I'll be showing you the database of information, and I'll be showing you how you price projects and focusing very much on that red circled area. So without any further ado, let's focus on estimating. And the main functionality that I want to sort of draw to your attention today is, first of all, this personalized database of information, where you've, as I say earlier on in the presentation, you've got all your materials, all your pricing, things that are very specific and frankly confidential to your business. All that information sits at the heart of Chalkstring. When you receive a bill of quantities from your client, typically in an Excel format, you can import that in to start the process, save you time creating it all from scratch. Just import it in and work on the bill you've been given. You can use templates. So these templates are all really about trying to save you time where you're doing repetitive work over and over again as a specialist subcontractor. This is about saving time and reusing information over and again when you can. You have within the system all your available supplier prices. So you, to price any material, can pick from a number of suppliers, all of which would have their prices in your system. So you can choose which is the best supplier to buy it from based on price, or obviously lead-in times, etc. But you've got all that information available at your fingertips when you're pricing a job. You can also see all the historic prices you've used. So to ensure that you're not being ripped off and they're not bumping up the prices, when you go to pick a material, for example, you can see instantly, well, these are the prices that are available to me now. These are the prices I've paid on previous projects. And it's really quite reassuring and quite informative to have that information at your fingertips to help you ensure you're using the best prices to be as keen as possible to win the job. Obviously, with construction, there's always unknowns, things that you can't plan for, but that you want to put aside a bit of cash for. So we can use what we call guesstimates, and I'll show you those, and contingency budgets and so on to allow for things that you don't know at estimate stage, but are likely to occur on the contract. So it's just about having a slush pot in the estimate to allow you to have a pot of money to use where you need to. A lot of customers talk to me about project-specific pricing, so obviously wanting to go out and get best prices and get support from their supply chain. The software will produce for you project-specific quotes, which you can send to your suppliers, and I'll show you those sorts of things. So it's a very streamlined way of getting project-specific rates into a project, if that's something you do. You've got the option to compare alternatives. I put suppliers and brands there, but this could be anything at all. But you could have different options and then compare them side by side to see which one is going to be the most cost effective for you as a business. And I'll show you those sorts of things. And ultimately, once you've gone through the estimate and you've prepared your estimate, it's about then producing documentation. So producing a tender with all the information in it, which you can submit to your client, very clearly laying out all the information, all the rates, all the quantities, etc. And also, early on, even pre-contract, you've got a material bill and a labour bill with a complete breakdown of all the materials you will need for the project and all the labour you will need for the project, all laid out across different zones if you've set up different zones. So you can have call-off orders, and you can produce a schedule of requirements to your contract managers or to your material suppliers with a phasing of timing, etc. I'm going to cover all of these things. These are the main things I want to show you in today's session, and I'll show you these as we go through the software. So if we now just go straight to a demonstration of the software. So I'm flipping across now to the Chalkstring software. So I'm just going to pull this across, and hopefully you can now see Google Chrome working here with Chalkstring. So this is the Chalkstring software I will take you through. At the top, you'll notice I've just got my.chalkstring.com. So wherever you can type that in, you can access this software. So it's a true cloud-based system. You can access it on any device, tablets, laptops, desktops, whatever you want. Recognizing most estimators generally are office-based, but it is worth just saying you have that flexibility to access it. It's a true cloud-based system. There are two sides to Chalkstring. So when you see this black toolbar, this is the off-site side of the software. So this is where we'll spend all our time today, looking at the database and pricing some projects. And in here, you can see you've got things like resources, which are your materials and your prices, and contacts as self-evidence, and accounts and so on. So there's a lot of functionality here, but this is very much the off-site side of the software. When you then have a project, so for example, if I take, let's say this, which one should we take? Let's take this facades project down here. When we have a live project, the software then has a second side to it, which is this toolbar. So when it goes blue, this is your live commercial side of the software, essentially. So we're looking here at a specific contract, as you can see at the top, and the tools are very much related then to managing this project. So things like tracking progress, ordering materials, paying labour subcontractors, creating applications, etc. And there's a whole host of tools in here to actually manage the commercials of this project. But for today's session, I'm not going to be spending any time here. Okay. The only purpose of showing this is to show there are two sides to the software. There's the live commercial side for a project, and then there's the off-site side here where we'll focus today. So that's a bit about the interface of the software itself. Let's start working through now logically. So if we start off with our resources, this is essentially a database of your information within the system. So for example, if I go to materials, this would be a database of potentially hundreds of thousands of materials. And depending on what trade you're in, whether you're in decorating or facades or groundworks or interior fit out, it doesn't matter. But the point is here is you have available to you a database of all the materials that you might want to buy. And this is something we set up for clients when clients sign up to the system. So you don't have to create these databases. We do this for you. But hopefully what you can see here is if I just search a couple of different brands just to show you. There's just a couple of random brands I picked up at Canal and SAS as examples. These are just a big database of materials. You can be more specific if you wish to. So for example, if you wanted to search for a particular type of material, let's say, for example, I wanted to go for metal as an example, then we can see now I've filtered out, in this particular example, SAS materials that are metal. And you've got, again, this filtered view of all these materials. And it's also worth saying that actually you've got bulk purchase quantities in here as well. So this is more than just picking a material. When the software then moves on to procurement, it enables this to manage things like pack sizes. It enables the purchase order to round up to the nearest pack size or pallet size or bag, etc. Again, that's really more relevant to the procurement side of the software. But the one thing you can't see here, you may be wondering, is you can't see any prices for these specific materials. And that is really because you could have multiple price options for a given material. So if I go across to my material quotes in here and I search for, let's just do British gypsum as an example, then you can see in here, just looking at British gypsum, I have 5 different prices available at my fingertips for that price list. The bottom 3 you can see here are what I'm calling sort of list prices 2020, and I've got 3 of those. And the reason I've got 3 is because I've got, in this case, 3 different supplier pricing within the system. So I can pick which supplier I want to use for every material. What you'll also see above here is I've got 2 project specific prices where we've gone out to, in this case, to CCF, and we've gone to CCF and said, right, give me your best pricing for this project. And you can see here the rates they've given you down this side. Regardless of which materials I'm using, these are the prices I've negotiated on that project for that material. And it's worth saying that this set of data you've got here is a central set of data that everybody in the business can use. So it's really great because it's always up to date and it's always current, if it makes sense. So at any stage you want to, should you need to change your prices, you've got a bunch of options. You can edit any price list. So by editing it, I can go in here and change individual prices should I need to, one by one, if that's what you need to do. You have that option. The most common one used by clients is this button here, which is duplicate with modifier at the bottom. So I could duplicate that price list and say I want to put say a 3% inflation on everything, and that would automatically replicate the quote with all the prices and bump everything up by 3%. So as we go into the new year, that's something that all our clients will be generally doing across the board. The alternative, there is one other option you've got as well, is that you can create what's called a quote request, which is basically a spreadsheet with all the materials on it. You can send that to your supplier. They can put their prices against it, and you can import that back into Chalkstring, and that becomes a new quote. So if, for example, you're seeing differential increases in pricing, 4% on paint and 7% on plasterboard or whatever, that is a very quick way of getting your suppliers to produce the latest up-to-date pricing for you. So hopefully at this point, you're starting to see this database of materials and prices. It's exactly the same for your labor activities. So however you measure and pay your subcontractors, whether you pay per day or per hour or per week or per square meter. These are all the different labor activities that you can set up in the system. And again, these are just examples. But for each one of these, you can then see again all the rates available within the system for different circumstances. So a lot of clients, for example, would have London labour rates and home counties labour rates and northern labour rates, or maybe you have night working rates. It's entirely up to you. This is very, very open to you. But essentially, you've got this database of materials with prices, labour with prices, and you've also got your fixed costs in here as well, or your prelims as well. So again, all this information is example data, but these could be the prelims that you have, or you can create your own prelims quite happily. But these are just example prelims, again, with all the ways in which they're generally charged and prices against them. Again, so you can add these into your tender bill. So hopefully at this point you're comfortable with the concept of this big database. I would stress we set it up for you and it's all customized for you. So if we now look at how that information gets used, so if I take, I'm going to take that, go back to that facades project here. And you can have multiple work packages, but again, this one just has one work package. And what I want to show you here is how that's used. So in this particular contract, okay, this particular contract has a bill item in it. Okay, there's only one bill item in this example. It's a big facades job. And we can see it's the supply and install of these terracotta tiles. We can see there's a description on there of what it is we're installing, so that the client can see what's on there when you produce a tender and an application later on. And we can see that two things. The cost for that is £184 per square meter to buy, and we're selling that on at £240.78 per square meter with our markup on it. And if I open that up, this is a very traditional rate build-up. So in this particular case, we can see we've got, in this, it's a facade, so actually it's about installing the membrane first of all. Then we're installing the rails, then we're installing the vertical joints. And these sections of it can be whatever you want. This is just a way of breaking your facade, in this case, down, and enabling you to measure it by different fixes. But what you'll see in each of one of them is that you've got all the materials you need listed down there, and also the labor activities down there as well. And you've got the different materials and labor. You've got the quantity you need, in this case, per square meter of facade. We've got mixture of units, which is just no issue whatsoever. You've got wastage percentages that you want to put onto the project. And then you've got the rates that you're selecting here against these rates. So for example, if I go down to, let's say the tiles, we can see we're paying £11.83 per item. And we have 5 items per, or 5 of them per square meter, and a 10% wastage, which means we're paying £65.07 cost per square meter for the tiles. So I'm pretty sure most of you on this call will be working in this way in Excel, but the concept is very similar. What that then means is if you wanted to, you could choose your supplier price. In this particular case, I only have one valid supplier price, and it's SIG 1183. But I mentioned things like guesstimates to you earlier on. If you're pricing a job and you don't know the price, or you haven't yet spoken to the supplier, but you think it's a certain figure, there's nothing to stop you putting in what we call a guesstimate. In this case, I'm saying £20 per item. Save that away, and immediately you can see that's changed to £20. So all my figures have changed through the whole quote. It warns you to tell you it's a guesstimate, i.e. you've put your finger in the air and picked a price. It hasn't been substantiated, and it's tagged orange for that reason, because you can't buy off that until you firm that price up. But from an estimating perspective, you can see I've automatically put that price in, and it's driven all the costs through the whole estimate. So in this case, our prices update accordingly. Something else worth mentioning just whilst I'm here is this concept of contingency. So we have lots of customers who don't want to work out how many screws they need, or how many beads of mastic they need, or how many nails they need, because it just gets to too much detail. I mean, you can do that in Chalkstring quite happily, but if you choose not to, this might be just a place where you say, look, I'm going to have some consumable items. I don't want to itemize what they are, but I know it's going to be, let's just say, £3 per square meter, then that automatically creates a contingency pot of money against here without you specifying exactly what that's going to be spent on. So there's lots of options here, lots of unknowns which you can cater for to build your price. And in this particular case, if we look at this tile and we look at the quantities, then we can see on this particular contract, the way it's been broken down is the client was given 4 different elevations of the structure, and the quantities then sit across those 4 different zones. You don't have to introduce different zones, but ultimately what this then does for me is as you put those quantities in, it calculates the overall contract value for you. And I'll show you how that works live in a second on a tender from scratch. So hopefully at that stage, what you're seeing is you've seen the database of information, you've seen a bit about how you price, and what this is then doing, of course, is producing for you an overall contract value, £1.9 million in this case. We can open that up and we can see instantly how much we need to spend on materials. So 71% of that is materials, 1.3 million. There's a wastage element in there at 10%. Labor is about 380k. You can drop down and see all your margin, how much margin you're going to make on the project. So you're going to make £68,000 on that contract, etc. So all that information is held within Chalkstring. So hopefully all that makes sense. What I'd like to show you now then is how you create a tender from scratch in a couple of different ways. So I've created a blank job here, just called Estimating Webinar 21. There's nothing in here at all apart from it's just a blank job with some fictitious information I put in here, as you can see. It is worth stressing, if you work with multiple trade packages, you can create as many work packages as you want. So if you're M&E, you may have mechanical ones and electrical ones, and if you're decorating, you may have fire stopping and painting. It's entirely up to you how you want to operate, and you can have as many or as few work packages as you want, and the principle is the same for all of them. So if I go into a ceilings work package here, there's 2 different things I want to show you. First of all, I'd like to show you the bill import, because that's something that's really, really powerful. So in here, you can see that we've got a blank page, and that's deliberate. There's no smoke and mirrors going on here. There's nothing in this estimate here at all. It's completely blank. So the way you would operate this is you can go into the software and you can import a client bill template. Now, one of the challenges we have as a software developer is that your clients will probably have completely different formats or even subtly different formats for all the bills you receive. None of them will be in exactly the same format. So that's a challenge for us because we have to interpret that. So what we do is give you the ability to download a template from here, which you can then copy and paste your client information into, and then you can import this in. So it's about producing a neutral import which Chalkstring can understand. So if I open up and import a client bill import, all you've got to do is tell it the file you want to import into the software. And I've got one here, which here you can see a sample bill import. So just to be clear, this is a downloaded template from Chalkstring, and you've simply copied and pasted the client data into it so that Chalkstring can understand it. And if I open that up and import it, what you can see immediately is it's brought in that information from the Excel file. Again, to be fair, I could show you the Excel file here, but it's the same information. But what it's brought in, if the information is there, is a reference, if there is one, a name, and also behind there, it's brought in also a description. It's brought in a unit of measurement, so in this case, with square meters, and it's also brought in the quantities. And of course, you can have multiple quantities if you wish to, but that's how you import the data into Chalkstring. And once you're in here, you can then work on that and start to flesh that out with information. So it's a really good way of just taking lots of data on a big tender, whacking it into Chalkstring, and then working on it from there on in. The alternative to that, or an alternative, is to then create your data from scratch if you prefer to. And this is perhaps stepping back more into the principles, but it's good to show this information. Sticking with the ceilings work package, this time I'm going to do a manual creation. And again, you can see here that we've got nothing in here, so there's nothing pre-prepared. So there's no smoke and mirrors going on here. But it's really a case of going in and pulling in templates that you've created. So for example, if I go in here and say, okay, I'm doing some ceilings work, what have we got in here in the ceilings work package? Then these are templates that you can save away, which you've used before, and you can reuse again whenever you want to. So for example, if I'm doing a ceilings work package here and I want to do some wallboard on MF, for example, pick on that, drop that into the project, and you can see it appears there. And again, I can go through and pick different ones. So let's say I want to do some grid and tile as well. So we're really trying to show this from first principles to you about how you can build these bills up yourself. And in there, so there's the 2 items that I've pulled in, and each of these are, as I say, templates, which can be set up by you and reused. You've got lots of red warning flags, which is fine. It's just the software trying to help you, tell you you've not yet done, you've got work to do. This is where you can then start to put things like overheads in here and profit margins in here and inflation, etc. And whatever those figures are, we can apply them across the whole project, or we can apply them individually if you want to. But it's still giving me warnings that we haven't yet priced the labor or the materials. And if we open these templates up, this is a bit like what you saw a minute ago for the facades. This is the template that's come in, and it knows all the materials we need. It knows all the labor we need. It knows we're going to break this down into 3 fixes, which is in this case, the metal fix, the boarding fix, and the plastering fix. But we haven't yet priced anything. And this is where you can start to be really cute with this. So if I, for example, want to price the MF6 channel, if I click on that button, it will say, well, look, these are the prices that are available to you. So you can buy that for 72 pence from SIG, or 74 from Minster, or 75 from CCF. So these are the prices at your fingertips based on the prices that you've agreed with your suppliers. And it is also worth showing that down here, you've got previous prices you paid on previous projects. So I can see that actually in 2017, 2018, we did a project called Black Hill Primary School, and CCF gave us 66 pence there. And I can't pick that because it's out of date, and therefore it's not valid, but it's useful to be able to see what we have paid previously. And ultimately here, you can pick a supplier, and immediately it puts that price onto that material. You know it's a valid rate, and that's starting to price your job up. So that's the basic principles. In reality, of course, what you're not going to want to do is to do this manually for every material, because you could be there for forever. So this is where you can then start to apply quotes across the whole project. So I could say, let's produce a material quote now for the whole project. It flags up all the material quotes that are relevant. So I want to use, let's just say, SIG across the whole project. Apply that. And that's now pricing up all the materials across the project. And it's the same with labor as well. We can go in here, and depending on how you want to pay your labor, what rates you want to use, again, we can then price up the whole project by simply picking a labor quote. Notice here we've got actual pay rates and estimating rates. So obviously I'm going to use my let's say my Midland estimating rates and apply those. So it's about having that information at your fingertips, and that's now going through and pricing up all that project for me. It's also worth mentioning in here that you can change. So we could flip across to a different supplier, or there's an option here to only apply it where it's cheaper. So if you wanted to apply the best of breed and you wanted to use 2 suppliers and get the cheapest from them both, if you were to tick that button and then import a different supplier set of prices, it will pick the best of breed for you automatically. Just refresh the page. Okay, it's refreshing it all. So we can see now our MF ceiling now is coming in. It's going to cost us £20.46 to buy the materials and the labour. And then the grid and tile is giving me a warning here about the materials, saying we've still got 4 materials that haven't been priced. So we can just see which materials those are. And that's going to be the rock fond material, so we can apply those prices, etc. So very quickly, you're getting to the point where you've pulled in what you want. You've costed it up, you've put your margin on it. We've discussed all the margin across the top. You can put your quantities in. So in this case here, I'm just going to type some quantities in manually. But again, those would come in automatically if you had a bill of quants coming in from your client. That then means this package value now is £50,000. And immediately, we can see a breakdown for all that information here. So there's a breakdown of the materials, labour, wastage, inflation, etc. So I can see I'm making £10,000 there on a £50,000 project. And it may be now, of course, you want to put prelims in there and other fixed costs, where you can go in and add in any prelims you want to put in here or fixed costs. It's also worth mentioning things like adjustments. So clients talk to me a lot about things like main contractor discounts and those sorts of things. So if, for example, you need to put an MCD on there for your main contractor to placate them to win the job, and they insist on, say, let's just say 3% for sake of argument, you can put that in. You can disclose that to the client because obviously they're going to want to see that discount, and you can save that away. So the contract value has now just dropped down to £49,000, but it may well be that you want to compensate for that and stick an extra 4% on, for example, or whatever that figure is, or it might just be 3% to compensate, entirely up to you. But I don't want the client to see this, so I'm not going to disclose it. So essentially what I've just done is put in a net 0 in there, but when the client then sees the tender, what they will see is a 3% discount, but you know you've covered for that by putting the uplift on there. So there's all sorts of tricks that are set up to work as you work as a subcontractor if these things are relevant to you. It's also worth saying in here that if you subcontract work out, so I'm working on the basis that you're going to supply and fit this item, you're going to buy the materials and pay the labor, but if you wanted to send that out to a subcontractor, you can have what we call items being supply and fit. So that's now being tagged as a supply and fit item, which means you can then send that out to your subby or someone who's subcontracting for you and get a price from them to supply and fit that item. So the software can be used either to actually do the install yourself or to manage your subcontractors, and that's entirely up to you. Going back to quantities, if you had lots of zones, so I've got one zone there, but for example, let's say you were doing I think we've got quite a few people on the call today doing residential work. If you wanted to add in zones here, you can create additional zones. You don't have to break this down at this level, but it's just worth showing to you that, for example, if you were doing a housing development and you had, 18 plots, and you wanted to put a prefix of plot on there and create multiple zones, there's ways you can create multiple zones really quickly. So you can now see I've got all my plots laid out for me across the whole project. So I've got 18 plots created for me there. So it's a very quick way of creating multiple zones if you needed to. And it's also worth showing that if you now wanted to complete the quantities for there, for sure, you can come in and you can type in whatever you want to in each of these cells quite happily. But it is also worth showing that a lot of customers now actually want to export this data out sometimes into Excel. So if you export out this information, you can manually complete it. So just open that up into an Excel file, which I'm just going to pull across so you can see it. So there's a summary of my quantities so far, the materials, the products I'm putting in with their descriptions and their units of measurement and all the quantities I've typed in so far. This is where you can then be coming in here and typing these things manually if you prefer to. Some people prefer to do that in Excel, or of course, some of this information could be formula based. So you could be using the Excel formula functions. And once you've changed this and put all your quantities in, then it's simply a case of importing that information straight back in, and all of this updates correspondingly. So there's quite a few different ways to get your data in. You can import the full bill from your client, you can start from scratch and type it in, or you can use these kind of tools to create things. So moving on from this, you can also produce what we call quote requests. So going back into this ceilings work package again, we've just created. And I'm going to take the one we've created manually. So at this point in the contract, it may be that you want to get better supplier pricing. So I can create material quote requests or labor quote requests, or even if you are subbing the work out, supply fit quote requests. And this is a way of communicating to your supplier what you want, letting them price it up, and then bringing it back into the software. So, okay, it's not a very big project, but the principle, it holds true here. If I create a material quote request for this job, again, just opening up another Excel file, we can see that on this particular job, those are the materials we need. So we only need 4 materials on this project. We can see the information about the brands and the specifics and all that information that the supplier will need to see. And as we scroll across, we can see in there, it's put in the full required quantity automatically. So it's calculated from a square meter rate of ceilings into how many linear meters we need of the metal and how many square meters we need of tile. And it's put the total quantities in there. And then this means that you could email this spreadsheet to your supplier or to multiple suppliers if you so chose. And that means they can come in and put in their rates, whatever these rates might be. I'm just making some numbers up just to plug some numbers in. They can put their pricing in there. They can also put their rebates in there as well. So this is about managing rebates. And that information can be emailed back to you. And then you can import that straight into the project automatically. Sorry, minimize that screen, I've got 3 different screens open, apologies, hang on. Bear with me a second, there we go. So within the software then, you could then apply those prices to that project and it would update on the relevant the prices they've just given you. So that's a very quick way of sending out requirements to a supply chain, getting them to price it and bringing that information back in. Something else you may wish to do is to make comparisons. So to show this, what I've done for you here is I've created under the dry lining work package, I've created 2 options to show you. So all I've done here is created the first option, priced it on SIG, and just show you what we've done. So this is a dry lining package of work with 4 different wall types in it. So all of these have been priced on SIG pricing. What we've then done is duplicated or taken a copy of that and recosted it on CCF. So that essentially gives me those 2 options side by side. So whether you're comparing brands or suppliers or simply just trying different things to work out best value, you can create a priced option, copy it and tweak it. That then means that we could take those 2 items side by side at any time you want to, and I can compare them in a side by side basis. And we can see that we've chosen, in this case, CCF as the baseline option. Well, let's just swap that around. It doesn't really matter. The numbers are the same in just whichever order you put them in. So I've actually gone SIG, and we can see the overall package to the client is going to be 690K all in. And that then means that we're going to make a profit of 115K on that. The only difference between these 2 is the materials in this case. So when we recosted based on CCF, we can see the package price has increased by £13,000, and we can see it's all gone into well, you can see it's gone £9,500 into materials, £1,000 into wastage. So essentially 10.5 grand of materials. I've not changed anything else. So very quickly we can see which is going to be the better option for you, and you can make those comparisons and choose whichever one you want to submit as your preferred tender bid to your client. So a very quick way of comparing options side by side and then making informed decisions. So when this is all said and done, ultimately you're going to want to produce a tender. So if we go back to, let's just take this project here. And I want to produce a tender at this point. So really we're moving into tender documentation now. The software produces for you a whole raft of information. We can produce a tender bill at any stage we want to. So it's simply a case of just clicking on that. And that produces a bill which you can submit to your client. So again, I'm in Excel. again at this point, so it's very structured data with your logo on top and all your project information. But what you can hopefully see then is you've got each product in the rate build-ups, name and description. You've got any zones that you've defined. If you've defined different zones, it's entirely up to you. You've then got quantities for each zone, units of measurement, your rates that you've determined based on your suppliers, your materials, your margins, etc. And also then the total value you're going to charge your client for that piece of work. And obviously down the bottom, you've then got any discount in here. So there's your main contractor discount coming in. Notice in this case, they can see they're getting a 37K healthy discount, but what they don't see is obviously the inflation to cover that. And then you've got an overall package price at the bottom. And you get a work package or a sheet like that per work package. So one worksheet per work package. So you could submit multiple work packages simultaneously. Other information you get here is you've got your material bill and your labor bill and your supply and fit bill. So again, you've seen me do a quote request, but this is worth just showing you very quickly how at this point in the contract, even before we've secured the job, I've got an internal document which tells me all the materials we're going to need to buy with the brands and all the specifics and all the information we need with a lot of detail behind it. We can see which supplier we've currently based the pricing on. So all bar that deep channel we bought from SIG. Got one item we've chosen to buy from CCF for whatever reason, but we can see that. So you may, in that case, go back and opt to buy that from SIG. So you've got one supplier on the job. It's entirely up to you. These are the rates that you've allocated because those are the agreed rates or the project-specific rates you've applied to the contract, and therefore you know you've got a total pot of money there, 343K of material cost, and actually the quantities are broken down then across the different zones. So on a large contract, this could be the basis of a call-off order to your supplier, and you might even want to put different phases on it. You might say I want that in October 20, and then these ones I'm going to need in January 21 or whatever it might be. It's just a case of producing information to help your supply chain manage your requirements, etc. So it's a call-off order. We haven't placed a purchase order yet. It's just a summary of what you need, and you can do exactly the same for all your labor requirements as well for your contracts managers, etc. So I'm conscious time is marching on, and it's an hour-long webinar. I mustn't go over that time. So hopefully that's given you a flavour of what the software can do. If I just pop back into the PowerPoint to wrap up, needless to say, if you have any questions and you want more detail, obviously we'll be more than happy to go through this in more detail, just on estimating or indeed on the wider use of Chalkstring. But hopefully that's given you a flavour of the sort of things you can do. So in summary, the main benefits we're offering purely for the estimating side of the software really is the first thing a lot of customers talk about is this admin burden they have of constantly trying to stay on top of supplier prices and estimators using out-of-date pricing that's no longer valid and putting the business at risk. It's all about having a clear picture of your pricing at your fingertips. You can only price jobs using valid quotes, so you can't be accidentally committing the business to an out-of-date price, which is then going to erode your margin. So about mitigating risk. Clearly, importing the bill, I would hope you can see as just a time saver to get you going. Import your data in and just work on it in Chalkstring from scratch. It's a big time saver. By using these templates I've shown you, and I've shown you a couple of templates there, but it can be whatever you want. It's just a case of setting up things that you use on a regular basis and just reusing. Needless to say, you can change templates at any time. You don't have to stick with what's in the template, but it's a very quick way of populating your tender with standard things you do if there's any repetition in your business. And if you don't have repetition, well, you can create templates to suit on the fly. Hopefully you can see that getting project-specific pricing is an absolute doddle. You simply just send out an Excel file, let them price it, and just import it straight back in. So a really slick way of getting best pricing and getting buying gains. If you can see the prices you've paid on previous jobs, you're less likely to be held to ransom or ripped off by your suppliers, and at least you've got the ammunition to go back and throw back at them the prices they've charged you previously and batter them down. Again, when you'd want to do that is entirely up to you, whether it's post-contract, once you've secured the job, or whether it's pre-contract to be keener on your estimating, entirely up to you. You can cover all the unknowns and the uncertainties in life, whether it is wastage or contingencies or consumables. Again, you've got plenty of scope to cover those things, and inflation and all that sort of stuff. You've got this really easy way to compare different options. And what most customers say they do is they create a tender on a spreadsheet, and then they kind of overwrite it with a different option, so they can't ever compare the two side by side. Well, hopefully I've demonstrated you've got that ability to compare and to use best of breed on pricing to be the keenest you can. And if we're going to produce all your tender documentation, not just the tender, but the material bills and the labor bills, then again, we should be making you far more productive. And these are just the benefits that relate to estimating. We've not even talked about the rest of the system, because the Chalkstring does so much more beside these three things, but we've really just taken a third of the section today and just focused purely on that. I've not even touched procurement or real-time cost reporting. We have webinars on those, which we've done. We can send you recordings if you want them, or a full demo would obviously go into detail on those if you wanted to. So please recognize this is just a third of the system, or less than a third of the system. So who uses Chalkstring? Okay, well, it's really specialist subcontractors across all trades. So, I mean, just some examples there, whether it's screeding or roofing or flooring or decorating or joinery or ceilings or cladding. Again, any specialist subcontractor, M&E, another one, heating, plumbing, any business that buys materials, pays labor, and sells the service on with a markup, that's exactly what Chalkstring's set up for. We don't aim this at main contractors. This is not aimed at the big tier ones or the big main contractors managing multiple work packages. This is about the guys doing the work, ordering materials, paying the labor. And it's about giving you that efficiency and enabling you to punch above your weight if you're in one of these trades. Names like that, for example. So again, depending on what trade you're in, there's a mixture of guys on the call today, but there'll be people there. This is across the UK. So, those sorts of companies, whether you're in residential or commercial, regardless of your trade, a lot of those are office fit out, some groundworks, interior fit out, joinery, etc. Those are the kind of companies we're working with, big and small. So, some very small companies there turning over a couple of million, some very large companies there, much, much larger. So, thank you for your time to watch the webinar today. I hope you found it useful. If there's anything in there that you do want to know more about, or you have questions on, or you want a full demo of the product, or you think it's something you want to, to see wider in the business and you want to set up a demo or a presentation with your team, please do let me know. Happy to do that. Contact details on the screen. We have got time for one or two questions as we wrap up towards the hour. So just give me a second to flick through. So we've got a couple of, no, we've got one question has come in from our users at this, from the attendees at this point. So the question relates to, can it be used by multiple people? So is it a multi-user system? So yes, actually it's a good point. Because Chalkstring is a cloud-based system, as we mentioned at the beginning, anybody can access the software on any device from anywhere. So it's a true cloud-based system. It is designed to be multi-user. So within the software, you could have all the users within the business set up. Everyone would have a unique login for security, but alongside each person, you can also set all your permissions as well. So you can see down the right-hand side here, all these different roles that exist here. All these roles can be applied to different people. So for example, it may well be for estimating, you set up an estimator role where you can only see the pre-contract side of projects with no live commercials, for example. And it's simply a case then of ticking or unticking the items that aren't relevant to that person. So it's all about permissions and controls to make sure people can only see what's relevant, but it's completely multi-user. So you could, for example, if you were tendering a project, you could have someone pricing up, for example, a ceilings work package while the other person prices up the decorating work package. So yes, multiple people working simultaneously, no issue whatsoever. And that's designed to be how the software gets used. Every keystroke is recorded and so on. And on the work packages, I would stress in here that when you edit a job, you can have as many work packages as you want in here. You can create work packages and set your VAT rates and all that sort of thing in here as well. So hopefully that answers the question about multi-user. There aren't any other questions that have come in during the session. if there are any questions you have, please do ping them through hello@chalkstring.com. We're more than happy to answer questions, or as I say, engage further if you want to talk more, find out more about it. But for today, we're pushing towards the hour, so I will say thank you all of you for your time, your attendance. Hope you found it useful, informative, and have a great day. And we're here if you need us. Many thanks indeed.